The NBA trade deadline is 8 days away. What is Denver gonna do? Probably nothing. We'll talk about some ideas from Ryan about who they could trade for, and I'll tell him why they're all dumb. And I have some slop for you around the edges. Plus, where's De'Aaron Fox going to land up? Lots of stuff to talk about in the trade market on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Thanks for joining us, being an everyday or hanging out with us Monday through Friday, as well as for our bonus shows, which we will do another one after tomorrow night's game versus the New York Knicks, which I will go ahead and say right now, I think is going to be a bloodbath. I am very concerned for the Nuggets in this game. We will do a post-game show regardless, and we'll try and talk it out if they lose 3 in a row, or if they pull off what would be a really quality road win. We will have you covered with a post-game show here on Locked On Nuggets. You can catch us on YouTube at youtube.com/LockedOnNuggets. Join the 8,700 and growing number of subscribers as we steam towards 10,000 subscribers this season. Appreciate you guys joining us and being part of the show. If you're joining us on podcast, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. My name's Matt Moore. I'm from the senior NBA writer from the Action Network. I'm on Locked On NBA Daily. If you're not checking out that show, do so. Go over to Locked On NBA on YouTube and just hit like and subscribe over there. I promise you guys are going to like those shows. We have so many great, smart people. We just do really fun shows. I mean, I really like the show that we've got going with Hayes and Doug Branson. It's been a lot of fun. So go check that out. He's Ryan Blackburn. He's from Mile High Sports. You can catch him on the Pickaxe and Roll podcast as well. Today's show, we're going to talk about predictions for the NBA trade deadline. What's actually going to happen at the deadline, both for Denver and around the league. We'll talk about De'Aaron Fox and some of the bigger names around. And I have all sorts of scuttlebutt that I will hint at in various ways, depending on how much I feel like I can actually share. But we'll start here, Ryan. I asked you the other night if you're thirsting for trades, and you admitted that you are, in fact, thirsting for trades. And I think everybody wants the Nuggets to make a trade in terms of the fan base, because I would think, unless you're like totally set and just like, no, the Cavaliers fans are not like, got to make a deal. Thunder fans are not like, what are you going to do? They're like, it's Boston fans are like, none of these losses matter. So, but Nuggets fans, I think, definitely would like a trade. You've got some names that you've been working on. You are always scouring the market for possibilities.
Yep.
Now I'm very good at always telling you why that's not going to work out. And so what we're going to do is, you're going to give me those names, and I'm going to try and be as open-minded as possible, because I will say I am less shooting down all these ideas than I used to be, because just like stuff, I will say like stuff happens. Like there's always surprising stuff. What I've really gotten away from is anytime that you're like, they wouldn't do that unless you've spoken to someone or heard from very good sources, do not assume that somebody will or will not do a deal. So give me a couple names here as we get started.
Yeah, so I basically have been operating under the premise that Denver, they're not going to make this large move. So I kind of capped the salary number that the Nuggets are looking at like max of $15 million or so.
Okay. I should have started this off this way. I checked in today, and here's what I will tell you is that the Nuggets are open to using their available draft capital. Now that doesn't, like, everyone's like, but they don't have any second round picks. They only have the 2031. No, but they do have swaps available. So I think that there are mechanisms they can use to potentially get, the word that I was told actually was assets, which I thought was an interesting phrasing instead of necessarily players. But now the good thing is, like, if you were to do such a trade, you could actually turn those assets into a player before Thursday. But I digress. You go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, the funny thing about that, by the way, is Denver has turned their future assets into current players on their roster. Peyton Watson was the 2027 first round pick. Julian Strawther was the 2029 first round pick. So that is why they don't have those picks. So if they're not willing to trade those guys, then you're kind of just like, you're up a creek. You don't have the assets to actually move stuff. So Denver's going to be hard pressed to actually get some of these names I'm going to talk about, but let me throw some names out here. Again, max of like 15 million per in terms of salary, because if they're not going to trade any of the core four, then there's no use going above that number. I was looking at shooters at the guard position. Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins in a 3-team trade where they get rerouted to Denver in a Cam Johnson deal.
Not bad. Not bad. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think you can take Isaiah Joe off and throw in Kenrich Williams, who the Thunder like a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Like they like him a lot, and they like him more now that they were like, hey, Kenrich, we need you to play center. And Kenrich Williams like, no problem.
Yeah.
And went out and did it better than any Nuggets player has in the last 5 seasons.
Yeesh.
But I do think definitely if the Nuggets were to get involved and be like, we just need your role players.
Yeah.
Because I do think, though, like OKC, I think is probably shifted a little bit away. I think they're going to be pretty patient. I don't, as much as it's like you got to do something with all these assets burning a hole in your pocket. I don't think Presti thinks like that, because Presti's always like, I can turn these into, I'll flip a first for a first and a second. Like I'll just keep flipping them out down the line. I do think that's not a bad idea. Isaiah Joe would be the second best shooter on the roster. Aaron Wiggins would be the second best shooter on the roster. Those guys can defend, they can drive, they can do all those things. I will, though, the reason that this will not happen is I do think that if you notice, Presti has been he's done deals with Denver. He's willing to trade in division, but only when he was like Presti trades in division when he's on the way down.
Yeah. Let me take your assets really quickly, but you are not going to take my players that could prevent me and our team from winning over you in a playoff series. So I don't think it's going to happen, but I figured I'd start off with those names.
It's a pretty good idea. It's a foundationally good concept in terms of if they were like, if OKC was, all right, we want to get Cam Johnson. And the Nets were like, we don't like, we want to get back as little salary as humanly possible. But the problem there is what's Denver sending out to make the salary stuff work?
It's tough. Like that's really difficult. It's probably Dario Saric. It's probably like you might have to throw in Julian Strother in order to upgrade upon him. And you may be having to offer those swaps. Like I
genuinely don't think that you can sell on Julian that at this point at that level. Like Aaron and Isaiah have been around the league for a while, and they're not veterans, but they're not super young either. They're not pups, and Julian's still very much a pup. So it's
this is going to be the problem that Denver runs into, though. They need Julian in 2 years. They need what he's going to be for what they need right now.
And like the issue here is like Denver could help out by being like, hey, we'll grease the wheels by giving you a swap. Like, hey, we'll throw in a swap here to help grease this deal. But the problem is the Nets are going to be like, but we have to take the money. We have to take money back. So what are we taking? And then Denver's going to be like, well, you have to take Zeke Naji. And the Nets are like, we'll talk to you later.
Yeah. So they would definitely find another team to reroute a third team trade in that case. Another couple of shooters, Buddy Hield and Luke Kennard, just kind of depending on where those guys go. Luke, I know, would be another candidate to be rerouted to a third team if they were to go after Cam Johnson, for example. I think like we'd bring up Ayo Dosunmu a lot. Jose Alvarado out of New Orleans, is he untouchable?
Yes.
Okay. I've talked about Denny Avdia and Herb Jones. Herb Jones, obviously untouchable. That's not happening.
Denny is absolutely untouchable. There's zero.
I had a feeling.
I think he is less touchable than Herb Jones.
Interesting. Like there's a great reason why he's really good. He's a really good player.
Real quick on Luke Kennard.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have anybody that I talked to in Memphis. I don't have anybody despite how my love for the team. I don't know this regime. And so I haven't, this is not inside. I will just say that what I have heard is that Memphis has been twice on the hook with, like, they sent Zaire Williams. They were like this close in preseason to getting a deal done for Day'Ron Sharpe, and that fell apart. And they would like to go ahead and they would love to do a deal for Cam Johnson and Day'Ron Sharpe. Like, they would love to do that deal, even with how well Zach Edey has played this year. And the last time they were involved in talks was for Dorian Finney-Smith. And they were in talks, and then it it had one of those like, oh, well, no, this probably isn't going to work. Maybe we'll come back later. And the Nets turn around and dealt him to the Lakers. And the Grizzlies were like, what the? So, but I do think like that's maybe an opportunity for Denver to slide in there and be like, perhaps I can be of assistance.
Yeah.
What it like Brooklyn will take Luke Kennard, so you don't have to, and we'll provide a swap. And then that gives you a shooter who you can bring. Now, I think a good question is just like, do you think Luke Kennard is playoff viable?
He's probably just as viable as Julian Strawther is. And that's like
interesting.
That's tough. Like you don't know what you're getting into. Is it superfluous at that point if you've got two shooters who can't play instead of one? Like I don't know. Like that's a tough call. So maybe that's not the right guy to go for.
Let's take a quick break, and we'll keep up next. We'll talk more about Ryan's list, and we'll get into some of the bigger names being discussed around the NBA trade deadline. We'll do that next here on Locked On Nuggets. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Attending NFL playoff games is an unforgettable experience that brings fans together. There's nothing like going to your favorite football arena and seeing all the pageantry and seeing all of the banners hang. Theoretically, could be 3 in the last 5 years, say, and being able to look out and see those. And if you go to Invesco Field at Mile High, you can see the dust hanging on the ones from long ago that still remain, that we remember the distant past. And that's what's so great is you get to share those memories from when you were children and those banners were first hung.
When you were just absolutely getting just demolished by John Elway back in the day.
Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I was also getting destroyed by Jason Elam, thank you very much, and Terrell Davis. Wow. I recently used Gametime Picks to find tickets for an upcoming NFL playoff game. Browsing through the deals was simple. I found great value for all kinds of seats around the venue. The super deal was especially impressive, offering the best value for the event. This is actually true. I was actually looking on Gametime, flipping through like how much do these seats actually cost, and you can get great seats on Gametime. The app's features like seat views before you buy and all-in pricing with no surprise fees at checkout make the experience smooth and reliable. Plus, the one-time ticket delivery and lowest price guarantee give you peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets.
Gametime.
Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making this part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us here on a Wednesday. All right, Ryan, keep firing some names at me for potential guys that the Nuggets could pursue at the deadline.
Sure. So at that forward spot there, another couple of names that we've definitely talked about before. Caleb Martin and Cody Martin are interesting veteran wings that could help, maybe like it could be on the fringes of their rotations. And for Philly specifically, I'm curious to see what they do. Are they going to try to duck? Are they going to try and tank and make sure that they keep their pick? Or that's going to be very interesting to see, because if it's out, it could potentially be conveyed to OKC this year.
They're going to send it. That's been reported. They're not going to tank.
Okay.
Like, look, the Sixers are 18-27. They've won 3 straight after beating the Lakers tonight. They're tied with the Bulls in the loss column for a spot in the play-in tournament. They are 3 behind the Magic for the 7, and they're 5 behind the Heat for the 6. Somebody's going to slip, and they're going to wind up. The worst I think that they'll finish is probably going to be like 8th, maybe 7th. It wouldn't surprise me if the Sixers wound up 7th. So I think they're out. The Hornets are really, I think, interesting, though, because I do think that if you said, we'll give you Zeke Naji, here's a question. For Caleb Martin.
Cody Martin.
For Cody Martin, which swap would you want to give, and how many?
Well, they're going to want something that's in the future. They're not going to want something that's very close, because they're not close to being better than you. So I would guess it would probably be a 20-30 swap or of some sort. And would I be willing to do that for Cody Martin? Probably not. Like that's pretty dangerous if Jokic is just walked away or decided that he doesn't want to like play basketball anymore. So that's a tough question. I don't think I would do that for Cody Martin. So I think but you might have to do that to get rid of Zeke Naji's contract at this point.
Yeah. And I think that is like if you get rid of Zeke and you add a good player, that's probably worth that's probably worth it, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder if they should do like a swap where it's like it's conditional where the first time that it winds up being better, they can use it. That wouldn't be bad.
That wouldn't be bad. That wouldn't be bad. Other names, Jayshawn Tate, probably not going to get traded, but Houston has him just kind of like.
Oh, you can get him. Oh no, you can get Jayshawn Tate
At this point, like they're willing to trade him now. Okay.
Oh, they've been willing. Oh yeah.
Okay.
You throw out a swap option for Houston, and Houston I think would do that very quickly. Now the problem I think is Houston's not going to take on your money because Houston's going to keep the powder dry.
Yeah.
Right. Houston has kind of made overtures. Steinlein reported this. Kelly Iko, the Athletic, have reported this. They're telling everybody who will listen they're not going to do a deal, which I'm personally kind of surprised at. Where I'm like, if you miss out on Fox, you're going to regret this. Because like I had heard them as a Fox team, and I think that they were a Fox team if it happened this summer. But they're like so into they're doing the thing of like we don't even know what anything could be inside the box, even De'Aaron Fox. Where I'm like, I get it, but also like just De'Aaron Fox is good. Like, don't get Fox. Like, start Fox and Amen Thompson, and then like Fox, Amen Thompson, and Alperen Şengün. Holy God!
Yeah,
that's a great combo.
Crazy team. Like they should do that for sure. They should be more willing to be aggressive, and maybe you could be facilitating such a deal like that in a 3-team trade. So there are some things that Denver could, of course, get involved there. We've mentioned Javonte Green before. What's going on in Indiana, by the way? Because they're trying to free up space for Miles Turner, I assume, in free agency. How available are Obi Toppin, Aaron Nesmith, Jarris Walker, like those kinds of guys?
Available. Yeah.
Available?
Mm-hmm.
So those are other names, I think. If Denver wants to bolster their rotation, those are names I'm looking at.
Yeah, I just don't know how you get it done because if they're trying to clear space, they're not going to take on dead money like Zeke.
Might have to be Dario in that situation, and maybe he opts out of that player option, or
so
he's
maybe you could do like Dario and Vlatko along with a swap, and that probably gets you in the conversation for those guys. So yeah, I mean, look, I think one of the things though is the Pacers are actually they're still big game hunting.
Yeah,
that's what is surprising to me is like this is 100% speculative. Haven't heard a heartbeat about this. Not a single thing about this. I would not be shocked if they got in on Jimmy Butler. Would not stun me at all. That is exactly the type of move that front office I think is looking to make, where it's like, wait. So we can send out money that we can use later to keep Miles, and we can add Jimmy and maybe make a run here and see what that looks like. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's a guy that could bring some physicality to that. I mean, they have physicality with some of their guys, but
it's weird because I feel like they have a bunch of guys who would be, and I think it's a testament to how much defense is systemic in the NBA, where it's like Andrew Nembhard can defend, Miles Turner can defend, Pascal Siakam can defend, Obi Toppin can defend, Aaron Nesmith can defend, like up and down. I'm like, that's a good defender. That's a good defender. That's a good defender. What happens when you put them all on the floor together? They're terrible.
Yeah, they're just bad.
Like, it's not all Tyrese Halliburton. It's a lot, but it's not all Tyrese Halliburton. Good God.
It's funny. Like, Miles Turner is the theoretical defender that makes a lot of sense, but he's not super impactful to me. Yeah, that's another conversation. But there's a reason why they're bad on defense, and it's not all because of Tyrese Halliburton, like you said. How about if we move over to the bigs? Larry Nance Jr., Jared Vanderbilt, Jalen Smith, Trey Lyles. Which of those names stands out to you?
Same again.
Larry Nance Jr., Jared Vanderbilt, Jalen Smith, and Trey Lyles.
So Nance is probably going to be used as a sweetener in a deal. he's a pretty valuable asset right now that's being shot pretty heavily.
Okay.
Vando's a no. Trey Lyles is probably getting dealt in the next. Well, I was going to say 48 hours. I think the Fox News might have changed that. But there was like, unless somebody hadn't told him, like I assume somebody has told Trey, and Trey's been like, don't. If you got the colander out when you make pasta, like just go ahead and put that in a box and don't put it back in the cabinet. Like that's where I think Trey Lyles was at, which Trey's been really good for them. Trey's been great. Like Trey's been a really good vet for a couple of seasons. He'd be a really good pickup if you could get, and honestly, you might be able to get involved in that. He also might wind up going in the Fox deal. So you might be able to sneak in there and be like, hey, well, hey, especially because the team I think that would probably be involved in that conversation is going to be Utah. And so, especially if you tell Utah that you'll send a swap to get off of Zeke, that probably gets it done. Like that because if you were involved in a bigger deal, then you get to kind of be like the facilitator so that you don't have to try and sell them on Zeke Najee.
Right.
You're just like, I'm helping you do what you want to do anyway, and you get this out of it. And that to me is kind of helpful. What else?
No, I like that. We've talked about Chris Boucher before. Mm-hmm. Denver is interested in him, but like how much they're willing to do is, I think, a fair question, and whether he's the right guy for them is the fair question.
It's more a matter of I'll talk on the Bruce thing real quick. This is what I've heard, and this is not from Denver's side, but I'll say what I've heard is, the Raptors were willing to talk about it, but it's like, Bruce is going to be their ticket to be involved in something bigger.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've heard talked about is at least being theoretically discussed somewhere in the universe. Yeah. If Golden State pulls the trigger on a Jimmy deal, is that Wiggins winds up in Toronto and Bruce goes to Miami. And that's and that helps Miami not have to take Wiggins' money back.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's, I think, is kind of like how that framework would work out. And that's the problem, I think, with Denver trying to get Bruce is like, Toronto's like, well, look, if we didn't have anything else, maybe we could probably figure out something, but Bruce is going to help us in any. And the other thing is, like, Stein reported this morning, they're in on Ingram, which I'm wondering if it's a feint and they actually go for Zion. Like, that seems like a very Masai thing to do, is to be like, work on a deal for Ingram and then pivot and be like, well, what if we just give you the same stuff for Zion Williamson? That seems like a very Masai thing.
I don't like the fit between any of those guys and Scotty Barnes. Like, I don't think it makes sense at all between.
I kind of like Scotty and Zion because you're just basically like, we're just trucks. We have two trucks. They're just going to go through you.
But you run into a team that's actually dealing with your size, that can deal with your size, and you're just like, all right, where are we going from now on? So
yeah, but that's like down the line. Like that's a problem for future Raptors.
Fair.
Let's take coming up. We're going to talk about what we think is going to happen with the Nuggets. We'll wrap up with Ryan's list of guys, and we'll talk some more about what's going on in the trade landscape here inside the last week, roughly 8 days before the NBA trade deadline. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us, making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us. Matt Moore and Ryan Blackburn. You got anybody else on the list?
Not too many guys. Like I skipped over Josh Okogie, who got sent to Charlotte in that Nick Richards deal. He'd be a guy that I think, okay, you don't want Cody Martin, but you'd prefer Josh Okogie in Charlotte. That's probably fine. I think like AO is still somebody that I think Denver should be targeting very heavily. He's still he started for them in this last game, but he's still coming off the bench for Chicago in most of these games. And that's the thing is like, this was like the move. Yeah.
I was talking to Hayes about this on Locked On NBA Daily. And he was like, every time Io starts, he's lights out. He's like dynamite every single time he starts, and he's crap off the bench. So like, this is going to go on for at least like a little bit, and I think it's going to make it very hard. They're going to once again be like, can't deal him. They're in a very interesting spot. Well, here's what I will tell you. You want to know who like the most like? It's crazy to me personally, but I just think the injury stuff has got them that rattled. Like I think Lonzo's going somewhere. I think he is getting moved. I think Lonzo Ball is more likely to get moved than Zach LaVine.
expiring contract. He's a guy who can help you. He's a smart 3-and-D player, can do a lot of different things. I understand it. He makes a lot of sense. He would be great in Denver if he didn't make $20 million.
Yeah. God, that's actually okay. Look, the injury thing exists with Mike too, as much as, and like, I want to be as fair as I can be to Mike. Mike has busted his ass to be available almost every game. Mike has done the work. The surgeries are what they are. Like, dude's had 3 back surgeries. Can't get around it. If we were to say that Michael Porter Jr. and Lonzo Ball over the next 5 years will be as healthy as one another. Okay.
I kind of doubt that, just because like we know what Lonzo's history is over the course of 3 full years, right? Like,
see, I go the other way where I'm like, I think it's more possible that Lonzo plays more games.
Yeah, that's I can't get with that at all. Like, Mike's proven
he had one really bad knee surgery that went badly.
So did Gallo. Like, yeah, and Gallo was able to come back from a knee surgery that went badly and then was able to extend his career and play pretty well for a long time. So like, it is possible. It definitely,
without the medicals, there's no point in us talking about it, because without the medicals, there's no way to know. Go with me on the theoretical though.
Okay.
Who would you rather have for the next 5 years, Mike or Lonzo?
Definitely Mike still. I just like, it's probably not a shocker to you.
No, it is shocking to me, because Lonzo's a really good shooter now. Like, he's a really good spot up shooter, and he's the defender that you're looking for.
I don't think he's the defender I'm looking
for.
I think he's fine.
What?
Like, he's
Lonzo Ball?
Lonzo's he's smart. He can do some different things, but like,
you don't think he's a good defender?
I think he's a good defender. I just don't think he's the level of guy that you think he is. Like, there's a difference there. He's probably a 75th percentile defender right now, like somewhere in that general range. Like, he's
so higher than literally every other Nugget on the roster.
No. Well, I think Peyton Watson's better than him. I think that, okay, beside the point. Like, if the deal is for Lonzo and Ayo Dosunmu, then sure, like, and that's great. Like, that's awesome.
I just think you guys gotta give up on that Ayo thing. I just don't.
Okay, probably.
You guys keep
if it's Lonzo and Patrick Williams,
Patrick makes
think about it.
Much. I mean, Patrick's way too much money. You know,
he's like 18 million.
But it's like for forever. It's like 18 million.
Sure, but Lonzo and Patrick Williams make basically like 3 million more combined than what Michael Porter makes right now.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So one thing I want to ask you is, what do you think happens with De'Aaron Fox?
Man, it's a fascinating conversation, because there are 2 teams that clearly stand out as the best fits for him, and that's the Spurs and the Rockets, like, especially in kind of the near short term. But I'm looking at the Spurs right now and I'm thinking, man, they could probably do better. They probably don't have to trade for Fox, and they'll be just fine for their future. I'm not sure if Fox is the right guy to kind of burn their capital on and say, hey, we're going to give up 2 first-round picks, or maybe it's multiple other teams' first-round picks. But we're going to give up those, and then we're going to give up Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes, then we're going to go get Fox. Like, I'm not sure if that's the right call. It might be. Like, the Fox-Wemby pairing it sounds pretty wild. Like, that could be something that rivals Jokic and Murray, clearly. So I don't know if I'm super worried about that in the near term, but certainly for the foreseeable future, Fox-Wemby would, I think, outpace a team that has Jokic and Murray.
It's a really interesting question of if they're in a playoff series 2 years from now. Jokic is 32. Jamal presumably is still here. How you rank those 2, right? Because like, even a year, like, let's go back 1 year. 1 year ago, which is, by the way, is insane that how the Jamal, like, what a difference a year makes. 365 days ago, it was like Jamal Murray is the playoff killer of all playoff killers and a Nuggets legend.
Yeah.
And now we're here.
Fox just hasn't had an opportunity to prove it in the playoffs for an extended period of time.
Well, and he was really good, I thought, in that Warriors series. Like, he was the guy that I was like, Fox can play. Fox is a 16 gamer. He can play.
Yeah.
Like, I got into it. Like, Matt George is like going to send me death threats from Locked On Kings because I was dismissing Demonis in the playoffs, and I still am just like,
and you should.
I said I was like, I really like Demonis' game. He's like, oh, apparently, and I'm like, no, I really do. But like, there are like when you just get killed in these high leverage situations as much as Demonis does in terms of how the team performs with you on court, but Fox doesn't have that problem, and so like Fox and Wemby in 2 years, that's terrifying.
Yeah. And not to mention they'll have Devin Vassell, Steph Castle. They'll be able to add on the fringes with a whole bunch of other guys. Like they're going to be monsters. So that if I were the Spurs, I would probably do it. But it is still like you don't know who's going to come available in the next couple of years, and everybody's going to want to play with Wemby. What about Jimmy? Where do you like? Because we've heard that there's some Milwaukee buzz with him.
All right. So I've been talking about the Milwaukee stuff forever. There was a framework that was talked about weeks ago. I think that was Chicago and Milwaukee and Miami and Phoenix.
Yeah.
My understanding is that has fallen apart, and I don't think Chicago is part of that conversation anymore. So if Chicago is going to be a part of it, it'll be in a different construct.
Because Beal doesn't want to go there, right?
Do what?
Because Beal doesn't want to go there.
No, I think that's part of it. It was actually more of Milwaukee. Milwaukee was going to get something from Chicago. And I think that what I've heard is that their parts of their organization ultimately came down on no.
Okay.
And the other thing is they can't really be a partner because Chicago's like, we don't want any money back. And Miami's like, we don't want any money back. And so it doesn't make any sense for them both to be involved because somebody's like, you have to find teams that are willing to take the money. Right. Milwaukee's going to do something. Well, I'm not going to say they're going to. Milwaukee's going to try and do something. Yeah. Connaughton, Portis, Middleton have all been mentioned. I will continue to say, like, do not be shocked if Brook Lopez is involved. If Dame is the one that I've kind of been like, wouldn't it be funny if, but there's been no indication that that's the case. I do think that there's like a lot of trepidation there about where things are headed with Milwaukee. And they're trying to balance, like, we can win the title, but we also need to be prepared for worst case scenarios. And so I think that they're trying to balance those things. And whenever you're in that spot, if the league senses that, then vultures start circling. And it gets really hard to do deals because nobody wants to help you because they want to accelerate your demise. Warriors, Raptors, Heat, like I talked about, I think is one construct. I do think that Toronto has made it clear to all parties that they are willing to facilitate what they need, because what Toronto wants to do, again, this is speculative, right? I have not talked to anybody in Toronto. The sense I get from reading tea leaves is that Toronto wants to get assets to then go out and get the guy. So the Brandon Ingram stuff from Mark Stein this morning makes a lot of sense if you look at it from the Raptors help the Suns get Jimmy Butler and get Jimmy Butler the hell out of Miami and get assets for helping everybody out. And then they use those assets plus dead money to go get whoever it is. So that to me is like one of the constructs. I still think there's probably going to be a dark horse that comes in on Jimmy. So the Warriors were the obvious one. When Windhorst went on SVP the other night and was like, hey, we're going to go long tonight. And we just are. When Windhorst went on SVP the other night and was like, hey, the heat have come down and teams in the middle are now look like no longer just contenders, teams in the middle. That was very clearly like Golden State, right? Like that's like big circle Golden State. But I do think that there are other teams kind of in the middle of the pack that are going to look at it pretty hard and try and talk themselves into this is a question I asked Hayes this morning, which I think is a really good one, which is like, and this is a good one for Denver. If the price is lower, is there, because for me, there's no price on Jimmy. Like, I don't want him no matter what. I don't want him in the locker room. I don't want him near my organization. I don't want my coach to have to deal with him. I don't want my staff to have to deal with him. I don't want my players to have to deal with him, even though they like him. Like, I don't want any part of it. I don't want any part of this nonsense on top of not wanting to pay him at age 35. No, I'm out. It's a hard no for me. But for most front offices, the question is always like, well, what does it take? This is still Jimmy Butler. If I can get him for nothing, okay, right?
There are worse things.
So I would ask you that if the Heat are like, give us 2 swaps and Zeke Naji and we'll do it. You have to make the money work. So Zeke and Dario.
Yeah, it's Zeke and Dario and Mike and 2 swaps. I mean, that's.
I would not trade Michael Porter Jr. for Jimmy Butler in any.
Yeah, I don't think I would either.
If you can find a 3-way trade where it's like they get Jimmy Butler and then something else on top of it, but again, the money gets tight there because they're in the first apron. They can't do right. So this is where that gets. When I reached out weeks and weeks ago and was like, "What's your interest in Jimmy Butler?" and they were like, "We explored it, but it doesn't really seem viable for either side." I just don't. I think that they probably were like, do you have any interest? And they're like, yeah, no, we can talk about something. Yeah, guys, we can talk about. You got stuff we can talk about. And then they were looking at the money and we're just like, yeah, there's no way to do this. There's just no way to make this happen.
It's tough. Like he just makes too much money. And as much money as Michael Porter makes, Jimmy makes way more. And Denver does not have the other matching salary. In retrospect, they should have paid Zeke more money because it would have been easier to kind of match those salaries up a little bit.
God, let's put that on a graphic. Ryan Blackbird. They should have paid Zeke more money.
What's the move that is going to have people reeling on next Thursday?
I don't know if there will be one because of how tight everything is. New York, I think, is going to do something that isn't like, oh my God, but people are going to be like, whoa. The stuff I've heard on New York is pretty interesting as far as what they're looking at. Like, they are going for it.
Yeah. I don't blame them.
They are, but they are not keeping any powder dry. So I think they're an interesting one. I'm keeping an eye on Toronto very closely. And the other thing I think that is at least has a lot of potential to cause some chaos is definitely Memphis. I think Memphis is the team that's probably bold enough to go do something because they're too good to not go for it, but not good enough to stand pat.
I'm really surprised that Jimmy's doesn't have Memphis on his metaphorical list. Like, to me, that makes a lot of sense. Fit between player and team.
Whenever you have a situation, I don't know why it's not.
Yeah.
I will just tell you that there's always like a off-court reason.
Got it.
For those. I don't know. I'm just telling you that would be my assumption is that there's an off-court reason why he doesn't want it.
Yeah. Completely fair.
Good for De'Aaron Fox and Clutch Sports for asking out of somewhere and not wanting to go to the Lakers for once. Good for them.
I agree 100%. Although I did read the ESPN article from Kevin Pelton on the 10 best, 10 players and their best fits, and 8 of them were to the Lakers. So that was pretty funny.
Yeah, but it's Pelton. Pelton's a Sonics fan.
I know. It's not like he's effectively told to put the Lakers here as much as possible. So
I don't even think that's it. I think it's genuinely just like they're willing to do it, and they have things to, like Rui, Gabe, Reddish, and their remaining picks is actually like that's a pretty good package. Like,
it's not bad.
Good, yeah, it's
money's not
better. It's better than Zeke Naji, Dario Saric, and Vlatko Cancar.
Times are tough over here, man. Times are tough in the Rocky Mountains. Does Denver make a trade? Yes or no?
No,
I agree.
I will say that you've singled out very you're looking for upgrades and exciting things to write about and think about and players. I am more interested in them doing something like what the Suns did, where I think them moving a swap or two to get picks, to get additional picks, is probably a really smart thing that they could do.
Oh, I agree. Like they should try to do that. If that is on the table for them to try to get a little bit of flexibility back, they should do that because they have two hands tied behind their back right now trying to make these trades.
Right.
They can't do anything. So you got to find a way to do something.
All right, that'll do it for Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us. Hope you guys have a great Wednesday. Hopefully this episode's still up to date in the morning. We will, if not, we'll do an update. We'll do another episode. Ryan, Nick's prediction. Nick's Nuggets prediction.
Knicks score 135 and Michael Malone yells at Katie Wingy.
He would never.
He would never. He'll yell at somebody in there.
Yeah, he'll yell at Bennett. Let's be real.
Yeah.
He'll yell at. There's no question. He's yelling at Bennett. And Bennett will take it like a champ and be like,
"What a guy!"
I asked the right question because Bennett's a total pro. All right, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.